Hi, everyone. This is Pam Coronado, and I've got Dale Graff here. And we decided to talk a little bit this morning um, about dreams. So I wanted to introduce my people to Dale because he's got a fascinating background, and a lot of people don't know it, and a lot of people don't realize all of the deep history he has with dream work. So this is Dale Graff. He was the director of the Stargate unit from the later stages, 1990 through about 1994. Most people in the remote viewing community know who Dale is. He's been super active with IRVA for many, many years. He's been on the board for years. I think he just retired recently. So I'm going to let Dale talk a little bit more because he's the one who knows. I'm gonna let him talk a little bit more about his background and why he's fascinated with dreams and a lot of the background research and stuff he's done.
Okay, listen, this is one of my favorite topics, of course, and my dream connection goes way back, almost to the beginning of me.
Okay.
First childhood memories were really of dreams, and I was born kind of premature, and premature babies have a history of more REM, rapid eye movement, dreams than the term babies do. So I was one of the dreamers.
I did not know that. I was a preemie too. Interesting. Okay.
2% more or whatever. And
Yeah.
I had these weird dreams. I didn't know what to call them. They were, like imaginations, but it was occurring in a dream state as I then learned vocabulary a little later on. But some of the dreams had information we couldn't have known about it. The word precognitive comes to mind because that's probably what they were. I was kind of perceiving things that would be happening. I grew up in a farming environment, and I kind of perceived things, visitors that we hadn't expected to come into the house or to the barnyard, and there they were. So I had those kinds of early dreams, but I put them aside after I got to the school system and focused on engineering and physics, which is really what I later became involved in as an aerospace engineer. And involved early on was a Gemini program before I moved to the intelligence community. So I had about 10 years of work in industry and then the intelligence community. And during that time, I really didn't have a lot of interest in dreams or anything of that nature. I was too caught up in my own technical work and getting a master's degree and studies going like that. But then one incident really opened me up, and that was in, I had a temporary assignment during the Vietnam era from where I was working at the time, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base with an intelligence organization, the Foreign Technology Division.
Okay.
Temporary assignment to Hawaii, Hickam Air Force Base. During Vietnam, I was a aircraft tactics, MiG versus U.S. You might say expert, really, I wasn't, but I knew a lot about that. And I gave briefings to pilots and that of how to avoid, or how best to avoid being shot down. So I traveled all over Southeast Asia giving these briefings to pilots. I came back from a trip one time. I went to the surf with my wife and children. And it was a day I shouldn't have been out there. Nobody should have been out there. The red flag was up, no lifeguard. But I had to get out there and get my energy back from these long trips. And I'm out there in this body surf pad about 3.5 feet long. I bought in a grocery store, just body surfing. And I'm out there, and I had to get back because the waves are getting high. A squall line was coming in. And I heard something above the waves and the sounds of the wind that sounded like a feeble call for help. This a sound I didn't want to hear. out there. And no one else should be out there. I don't want to get into this horrible surf and go out toward the coral reefs. So I wanted to turn back, but I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. Something kind of took over me in a way. And I started paddling out to the reefs, and I bumped into a woman who was drowning, and I was able to bring her back.
Oh, wow.
And the experience led me to think about how did I do this? How did I get back? She was in a rip current. I was able to get out and get us both out of there. So I started studying, getting back to the dream side, this intuitive impulse of going out into the surf like that. I can't explain that normally. There's just no way. Later on, I learned that she had never even called for help. So it was sort of a
Oh, wow.
quiet mental call for help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she also said that as she was being swept out in the riptide and she couldn't swim, that she felt peace and that she would be saved, even though she was sinking at the time I found her. Anyways, it was an incredible experience. So it led me to reignite my interest in things that are unusual. I got into the dream world again, studied, studying research work, and came across the dream telepathy work at the Maimonides Medical Center in New York. This is around 1969, 1970. I set up a group at that time in a local area in Dayton, Ohio, and we did experiments with dreams. And we were very successful in having dreaming about where people would be traveling. And in the midst of all that, we had precognitive dreams as well. So I continued on that, and through the early 70s, I even became connected with the dream workers in New York City with the American Society for Psychical Research, and I took part in an experiment with them doing dream distance, ESP. Or at that time, I never heard of the word remote viewing; it hadn't really existed yet in the early 70s. So one thing led to another, and I started studying the field more and more, set up additional experiments doing dream work, and eventually became connected with the remote viewing work at SRI through another set of coincidences and dreams. But in addition to my involvement with the remote viewing work, I continued with the dream work, and eventually set up workshops in the local area where I was then living. I'd since then moved to Maryland. And I started working with the Annapolis Healing Arts Alliance group and did dream workshops there, focusing on precognitive dreams. And this is in later on. And then eventually I was able to do dream workshops at the Ryan Research Center and around the year 2000, or right after 9/11, when I had a series of frequent dreams about airplane accidents and 9/11 as well. So as I was keeping a detailed dream journal, which I began in 1970, and still do. Became a member of the International Association for the Study of Dreams. I worked with them. I did experiments with them, set up precognitive dream tests during our annual meetings, and had a lot of success in my own self, actually winning first prize a few times. So anyway, I continued on with this kind of work with the Ryan Research Center doing workshops. I did workshops on dream work and precognitive dreams of groups in New Hampshire, in Philadelphia, and certainly Baltimore area and DC area. So I have really an extensive background in working dreams going way back to 1969, 1970. And I continue that to this day. I keep a detailed journal, and I've had some really successful precognitive dreams having to do with unfortunately, airplane disasters, and on the space shuttle. I had a very vivid dream about that 5 days before it happened.
Oh, wow.
It's whole
Did,
history.
did you run into Alan Bond in your studies and
Yeah, I
yeah.
did. I did run into, yeah, Alan Vaughn, and at that time he was the editor of a magazine
Mhm.
in Los An in San Francisco, Intuition magazine. I met him in conferences, and he was one of the star performers at the Maimonides Medical Center
Yeah.
um, during that phase, as well as a few others that, like Robert Vandercastle, that I became very friendly with. Yeah, during the International Association of Study of Dreams conferences. So I had this extensive background. Uh,
Yeah.
and I continued with the dream work. I also included other aspects of what I call our psi function. And I like to use the term psi because it encompasses a lot of terms and sometimes are confusing because some of them relate to a function, some of them relate to sensory perception, but psi, so PSI is a research term. It encompasses the field of the remote viewing and related phenomenon. So I use that term. And I continue, working in that area even now in my retirement years, encouraging people how to develop the dream precognitive dream abilities. And we've written papers and short reports on this that have been published. In fact, one of my projects got published in a physics publication, which is
Oh, wow.
rare for this field to enter into. And that had to do with a project I set up about 5 years ago now, and with a colleague I was working with at the time. She lived in Orlando, Florida, and the both of us worked together in this, and in terms of predicting news photographs that would appear in a future news, 3 to 5 days ahead of the publication, and we chose that future time to get out of expectations. The photographs had not even been taken yet. The event had not yet occurred. And we were quite successful in this. And the pictures were not deducible. There was a certain page in a certain newspaper where they would publish these random type photos from around the world. So you just couldn't guess it. I did an analysis on that. They were random. You couldn't anticipate what they were. And the details were really quite exact. Judges had no trouble matching our data with a control group photograph or from the same source. So we did that, got published, and I'm very happy I went through that process. It was a hard one to do, but we were able to do. And I continue, thinking about the whole field of precognitive dreaming, how important it really is for all of us to be more aware that we have this talent. My goodness. And some of the reports I read, and I always end up saying, it's like, well, if more people cultivate this, then maybe the the average person who can also do this might be forewarned or have a precognitive dream about, say, a school shooting and not send their kid to school that day, or at least you have to put on alert, be on the alert. And there are lots of applications for this in your own life, and it could be trivial or it could be fairly major. And I've had some major issues that were presented in a dream before or moved in that direction and maybe got burnt by that situation. So yes,
Do you think, I think that a lot of people have precognitive dreams already and they just don't realize it, that they might dismiss parts of it as just nonsense and things like that, and they're not realizing that there's a precognitive aspect to it
yeah,
already.
absolutely. And they don't have to be major things. They can be little trivial things. And you say, well, I could have guessed that. We have our logical mind come in and it dismisses the validity of the experiment, of the
Mm.
experience. But then there will be that time when it is a significant event. When I retired, my wife and I ran a bed and breakfast. We lived right on Chesapeake Bay, on a cliff overlooking the bay. So it was a really attractive place for people to come with us, to come to our place. And we got to talking to the people that came there, who had, when they saw my books, they knew my interest. So we had opened them up to discussing dreams and other events related to our paranormal abilities. And remember an incident where a woman is very sad and tearful. She was one of our guests. And she said, I had this reoccurring dream, and that's really a clue. If it reoccurs, you start paying attention to it. But in a reoccurring dream, she could see her husband in bed with her, and he would then all of a sudden roll over and fall on the floor. This happened repeatedly, but she never did anything about it. It was just a dumb dream. Well, then one morning or one evening, there was that sound, clunk, and then he had a heart attack and he died.
Oh,
So
wow.
now
Mm.
she grief. Now she has a guilt. Why didn't she take heed of that? Why didn't she give some warning? Why didn't she do something about that? Well, yes, she could have. And then there's a case that it actually appeared on a CNN cable news network publication after the Miura explosion in New York in Oklahoma City in 1995. A woman was being interviewed. It was a year or so after, and it was some dedication ceremony to honor those that died there. And she was very tearful, and the reporter asked her, sure, it's a sad thing, but you seem to be really taken up in your grief. She said, well, yes, because the morning before the disaster, my husband got up and he said he had a horrible dream of being engulfed in fire, and he couldn't get out of the fire. And she said, oh, that's just a nonsense dream. Get to the office in time before you're late. Well, of course, he never came back. And
Mm.
but had he delayed his arrival, that he could have saved his life. And I had the privilege of being interviewed by an NBC program one time on precognition, and it was tied in with the spouses of those that had perished in the attack. And there were a number of incidents with surviving spouse would say, yeah, my husband who was one of the victims had these strange dreams or feelings that he shouldn't go to the office that day, and but no, he just said, well, that's just a nonsense dream, dreams don't mean much, and then he went in and never came back. Um,
Right.
One individual I did talk to directly did go into the office, but he turned back at the last minute and went home.
Uh, so that's why you got to talk to him.
Yeah, sorry. But he was based on intuition, uh,
Mhm.
part of the whole process. Because sometimes our intuition results from a forgotten dream. We have a precognitive dream, maybe we don't remember it. And then later on, there's this intuitive impulse, and it's probably based on information we already had it in our subconscious mind. And this is the opportunity to now activate it. And that leads to my other favorite topic is synchronicity, because I think these are all related. When we go to a particular spot and get there at the right time to meet just the right person, how do we know that? How do we do that?
Mm.
Sometimes a dream precedes it. But a synchronicity is sort of like an intuition, and it's sort of like carrying out a unfulfilled dream, and then the right moment, the right time occurs, and then the synchronicity happens, and we accomplish what we were hoping to accomplish, or find what was important for us. So all these factors come together, these experiences. And dream work is sort of a foundation for all this. And of course, going into dream work brings out a lot of other aspects too, because there are many personal issues that can be worked out in dreams and not necessarily related to our psi talents, but they're just simply things that bubble around in our subconscious mind that need some kind of resolution. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's an urge to go into, say, maybe a different line of work, or a change in lifestyle or something like that, diet, whatever. All these things pop up in dreams. So there's a tremendous benefit, not from just strictly personal and interrelationship, but also the advanced information that they can provide, and
Yeah.
sometimes whether you want it or not. But uh,
I call it the brilliance of dreams. But yeah, they're brilliant. Actually, they're so clever
yeah,
too in the delivery, right?
well, that's pretty much a quick run through, Pam. I could do a lot more.
Yeah. And so people who don't know me, I think most of the people who are on my channel do, but my work as a psychic detective started because of a dream. Um, and I had always had really vivid dreams since I was a kid. And I started recording my dreams and writing them down and keeping a journal, which I highly recommend to everyone. But I had a dream about a woman who was about to be, unfortunately, I dreamed it through her eyes. So I dreamed that I was this woman who was about to get murdered by her husband and his mistress. And I saw the location where they were taking her in the vehicle. And I was able to step forward and help law enforcement find her remains and work on that case. So that was kind of my lead in into this whole field, and I became obsessed with dreams obviously at that point, and then started learning how to control my intuition. I met Alan Vaughn. He took me under his wing a little bit to teach me about dreams and help me understand dreams. And he introduced me to remote viewing and the remote viewing world, and Bevy Jagers, who trained me in the detective work. So I've been working with dreams for a really long time. I still continue to have precognitive dreams. I think one of my biggest ones, um, pretty impactful, was not real long before they got bin Laden. I had this dream that I was a soldier. I often dream from other people's perspectives. So I dreamed that I was a soldier and I was in this building, and it was dark and smoky, and we had like green laser lights or something, and we were going up this stairway, and I was the person at the back, and we were being very careful not to squeak any floorboards. It was very, very visceral, the whole experience. And everybody was making hand signals, and I was a little scared. And I knew that we were going up there to get someone. I had no idea who. We were going up there to get someone, and I knew that it was going to be dangerous. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And then I woke up, and just before I woke up, I heard a male voice say, "We got him." And I'm thinking, God, who? What is that? What was that? And then days later, I see the front page. It says we got him, and that's when they got Bin Laden. I was like, oh my gosh, I was there.
Yeah, that's sort of like what happened to me in a way with the missing general in 1979. General Dozier who was an army general stationed in a NATO base in Italy, had been abducted by a terrorist group, and through various synchronicities, I ended up on a search team in Italy, and the search went on for about a month. But during that time, since no intelligence data were really limited from both sides, from the Italians and also from the U.S. side, and we didn't have remote viewers working on it, but then some information did come through that was relevant. But when I was in the field like that, in the search team in what I call in the field, um, I began having a series of dreams that actually, like Pam described, the perspective is almost from inside the place where the captive is being held. And a series of dreams actually presented contradictory information in a tent. I can, well, maybe he's out in the wilderness somewhere.
Oh.
And also inside an apartment building with five, or at least five or so terrorists, including two women. And it was details about their facial features. Okay, well, eventually, and then there was information in a dream which presented a very clear view of a grocery store in an apartment building. inside, there was information indicating going up a stairwell to the first floor. Oh, well, all this information eventually was verified. Now, didn't help in the search because an informer led to the exact spot, but it showed that in dream work, it is possible to get some really accurate data. Now, had the informer not popped up, which was really quite miraculous because had those had been kept any longer, he probably wouldn't be alive. But had that not happened, this information would have narrowed down the search to a certain area in that city, which was also identified. So the value of dreams for that case was really, really quite unique and showed the potential, as Pam is pointing out, on how this can be actually used in detective work like she has done. So,
Yeah.
great.
So the reason we're here is we're going to do a workshop together, which I'm really looking forward to in June.
And I have, of course, over the years prepared procedures and tips and recommendations of how you can optimize not just the dream recall, but how to use it and how to record it and how to trim the noise out of it because there's always going to be some background information coming in from your own self and how to filter that out and how to focus. I call it dream precognitive dream crafting because it's some of the things you can do to set it up mentally before you even go to sleep that night in terms of a not really a ritual but a procedure that's helpful. So I have all of that prepared and it's been very successful over the years.
Yeah, I am very much looking forward to to this. So we're gonna do a live dream workshop together in person in Easton, Maryland, a super cute little town there in near the Chesapeake Bay. And the dates are June 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. We're meeting on Sunday, the 21st, and then we're going to be working all day on a Monday and Tuesday. It's called the Wild Dream uh, Weekend. So people ask me why it was called the Wild Dream Weekend. We had to change the venue at the last minute and the dates because we had some issues with the venue we were going to hold it at. So that's why it's still called the Wild Dream Weekend, but it'll still be a Wild Dream Monday, Tuesday.
Sure will be. And that part of the Chesapeake Bay is almost directly across from where I once lived on the cliffs. So it'll be sort of like a homecoming for me. And I'm
Yep.
coming down what's called the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay, which is more the tidewater area. And
Yep.
really a fantastic area. If you love seafood, you're in the right spot.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to it. So, thank you, Dale, for coming on and telling us about your background. Because I don't think a lot of people do know your work in Psi and your work in remote viewing and all of that, but I don't think a lot of people know the story about your work and dreams. So, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I do have a lot of this in my two books that are out of print. I'm in the process of getting them reprinted.
Oh, good.
So that's coming up. I've been working on that and may not be available by June, but at least I can discuss that. But a lot of the material I talked about here, except for the rescue one, I held them back, held those back. But many of the others are in there. And also examples of remote viewing, of course, of my colleagues. So, anyway, so it'll be an interesting weekend, and I'm sure the people that attend will have synchronicities and will follow them up.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I got stories about that when they dream about the future week ahead and find out that yeah, that did happen as I dreamt the week before. So proof proof is when you actually see it and feel it yourself. Then you will know it is really possible.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
And that's what we'll be doing.
That's what we'll be doing. We will be doing dreaming while we're doing the workshop. So, yep.
You talking to dreamers and also have lots of fun having synchronicities. So, hey, this ought to be fun, Pam.
It is going to be really fun. Yeah.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Dale.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
All right.